And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO at Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is Sandy Smith. Sandy is the founder of Smith Publicity, which is a firm that focuses on book marketing and book promotions. They've worked with lots of New York Times authors and independently published authors. She's been at this for quite some time, since 1997, actually. This will be fun. So let's just dive in here, Sandy. So book marketing, book publicity, PR. So it's something that, almost all of my clients deal with or need to deal with or should deal with, et cetera. Let's start here. What's totally different today than even 10 or 15 years ago? Because sometimes I see people coming at this from a playbook that I was like, ooh, that's 10 years ago. Like that was a great idea, but ... So what's like sort of
Yeah.
cutting edge and works best today?
Today, it's all about sharing content and social media profiles in terms of
Okay.
getting, especially podcasts. Our podcast, people will say, "Can you get me on Joe Rogan?" And it's like, okay, let's look at your profile. And we have get people on Joe Rogan. It's not an impossible thing, but it's akin to winning the lottery, of course. And then, you look at their social media platforms and they have Twitter and they haven't posted anything in 5 years, or they'll have a
Right.
blog and it's like, okay, we've got to build a story here. So, managing your online presence, whether it's social media or sharing content, is more important than ever before. A
Yep.
few other
And I think the
things. Go ahead.
consistency piece that you mentioned is key because sometimes what will happen is, author writes a book, a lot of activity, noise, noise, noise. Then they go into sort of author witness protection program, pop
Yeah.
out, like
Yeah.
Groundhog's Day 4 years later, and they haven't done anything. Like, okay, showtime. Like you have to be
Yeah.
doing that, regardless of what you're promoting or why you have to consistently drip
Yes.
your content out in ways that matter.
Absolutely. And that goes to the point where, especially for nonfiction books, fiction's a bit of a different conversation, but for nonfiction books, our business experts, our thought leaders,
Yep.
the pre-order campaign is very important now if they want to make those lists, the bestseller lists,
Sure.
Wall Street Journal, New York Times. However, most of our nonfiction experts write their books not because they want to be authors. It's because they want to become thought leaders. And
Yep.
so their book, it's got a longer shelf life than ever before, which is
So
really
stay
exciting.
stay there for a minute because I think
Yeah.
there's this huge disconnect between traditional publishing industry thinking. So the publishing
Hmm.
world, my experience, looks at a book as a seasonal item. Oh, that's a spring release or a fall release, like it was a
Yeah.
skirt or a bathing suit or a sweater. And to the author who spent blood, sweat, and tears, it's like, no, no,
Hmm.
no, no. That is an asset that should serve you well for 5 years, 7 years, whatever the case may be, right? It's a little bit more
Exactly.
evergreen. And what we're starting to see now, which is really interesting, is more nonfiction, more business books are having a better second year than first
Yes.
years. It's not just
Yes.
about bang, launch it and go home, which is what the publisher
Hmm.
wants you to do. So
Right.
talk to me about that because I think a lot of people get
Yeah.
obsessed with this
Right.
crazy
The launch
sequence.
date is, and our vice president, Mike Honorado, he comes from traditional publishing. He was actually a client of ours and he's been working with us for 4 years now. And, one of the things he said is like, authors are so fixated on the pub date, right? And if metrics aren't there in the pub date, their ego just is crushed.
So
And
I
while
was having this conversation with someone the other day where I asked them, "What are your five favorite books of all times?" And it was like Good to Great and In Search of Action, the classic sort of nonfiction books. I said, "You know the pub date of any of them?" And they sort of looked at me. I'm like, "That's the point, right?"
right,
Now,
right,
if you're
yeah,
writing about, the election that happened 6 months ago, yeah, then it would matter. But a pub date is this
exactly.
this irrelevant. And I think if you start getting out of the mindset, oh, but I'm a May 7th or whatever.
Exactly, exactly, because that is, it's important for the publisher, but for the author, um, you know, and the media, which is where, of course, where we wear our hats. The media doesn't care about your publication date. We have to say this to authors, like they're like, what kind of coverage am I going to get on my pub week? And yes, we do that, and that's a goal. But Fast Company might not be covering your topic until
Sure.
June, July, August, the following February. They don't care about the publication date. Frankly, they don't care that you wrote a book. What they don't.
Right,
There are
right.
thousands that come out every day, books every day in the United States alone. What they care about is that you have something of value to share with their readers, listeners, viewers. And the book always comes along for the ride. And it's great credibility and obviously
Sure.
just something fantastic to share. But having a new book is always great, but it's more the content, which goes back to what I said earlier is
Yeah.
if you're an expert, you've got the credibility and you have an online presence that is sharing and has that funnel, that's more important now, going back to your original question, than 10 years ago. It's that the book is much more evergreen than ever before.
Yeah.
It's not that pub date and over, okay, 6 months, it's collecting dust and I have to work on my next one. That's not the case
So
now.
how do you deal with, and I always ask clients to think about this, there is a natural tension between a publisher and an author. And if you're self-published, it's different because you are the publisher in that case. So you alleviate
Sure.
a lot of these stressors, right? So ultimately, there's a period of time, this brief moment, almost like an eclipse, where everybody's objectives are aligned. We want to sell more books, right?
Right.
And then we're not aligned, right? So I've had far too many conversations with some really, really, really smart folks that have, put together some amazing books. And I call it the postpartum conversation. It's, 4 or 5 months after launch, you say, how'd that go? And they're really bummed out because they're a little OCD with hitting Amazon and watching their numbers, like literally in real time, like it's the Jerry Lewis.
Every day. Yes.
Click, 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 click. Not that I'm doing this, but I was at number 3,572 yesterday, and now I'm at, it's like, okay, stop. Touch on that for a little bit. How do you avoid that postpartum of after an investment of time, energy, and money for
Right.
PR that the client is satisfied? Like it's about getting clear on goals, I guess. But
You're exactly right. When we talk to authors, it can be, 2 months after the pub date, 2 years before the pub date, anywhere in between. The first question I say, or one of the first questions is, help me understand how you define success. 3 months after pub date, a year after. How are you going to feel that your investment with us or this whole book is a success? And their answer usually is, I haven't really thought about that.
And that's a strategy question, quite frankly, because
Yes.
I asked the same question, and first I get the look, and then I'm like, sell a lot of books. I'm like, who cares? Like, for what?
Right.
So 5,000
Right.
books, big deal. 10,000 books, big deal. Then
Right.
what? And then they realize that they don't really know, that they've been caught in this blender. Why did you write the book? What would success look like for you? Let's talk about that. Is it to build your brand? Is it to open new doors? Is it to whatever? Because there is a lot of not just jargon, but social media metrics that are really vanity metrics. Ooh, look how many retweets you got. Ooh, look how many comments. And unless you know that those are predictive indicators to outcomes that you're hoping for, it's really noise.
Yes. So that's exactly, we dive in deep to and this is a great point, to your target audience. There could be all these people who could read your book. I'm like, well, that's great, but tell me about your business plan. So you have a book on, how to hire the best, talent, for example. And then I say, and it might be an individual entrepreneur, someone who has a small firm of 10 people or even medium-sized firm of 100, 200 people. Like, great. You said, my book is for anyone in HR. I'm like, fantastic. Now, for your business model, what kind of clients are you trying to attract? Right. Because if you say that I am in it for high-tech firms or manufacturing, that is more important to me than just anyone in business, than anyone in HR. Now let's get to the industry, because we'll say, say you get a nice Peter and Fast company. Well, that's wonderful and great and name recognition. But let's look at the trade publications, because that's where your future clients are. And that's where they're reading. And that's, where they're getting their influence. So when you break it down like that, when we have the conversations, they might say, I want to be a New York Times bestseller. I want to sell 100,000 copies. And then when you kind of walk them through it, it's like, what? Book sales become not important. The social media, retweets, great, but not important. But I'm looking to grow my business with the HR tech people.
Yeah, right. Because you can find that audience. So one of the things that I say is bad PR is, about shooting for the fences. Oh, we want to be on the Today Show. Listen, you get on the Today Show, it's a good thing, but even just the number of authors on the Today Show annually today versus 10 years ago is but a fraction, right?
Right.
So that's really the wrong question. It's a matter of, think, sort of, I always talk about sort of hand-to-hand combat. So who are the 200 people, if we got this book in their hands, could change your
Yeah.
business? And it's like, oh,
Oh,
like really?
so
It's like,
it's,
okay, we could find
yeah,
that. And sometimes it's the combination of good PR and good campaigns that are very, like, we're living in the world of the long tail, the world of
yes.
laser focus. So,
Hmm.
Oprah's great. If she calls you, take her
Yeah.
call, hang up on me. But the reality is you've got to build your own success, niche by niche by niche by niche. If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts.
Absolutely. We've had authors on the Today Show. We had one on last week. We had the cover of People magazine 3 times in the last year, once last month. I have my copy here. That's all great, and it can help book sales. But we had an author who did it's a parenting book, so it's a little different of an expert.
Sure.
Did one affiliate like NBC. It got picked up by 15 other affiliates, and her book sales went up 10,000 in that week. That was kind of amazing because it's TV. Because TV is kind of you don't always know, but parenting, consumers, it was perfect. But we've had other people on the Today Show, self-help book, didn't sell one book, no blip after, like it was an 8:30 interview. It was nice prime time. Nope, no traction at all. Was it great that the author could put as featured on Today's Show? Fantastic. But we hear that there are certain podcasts that will get not just book sales, but the phone ringing.
Which is the key.
Right.
Which is really the key, because most people, listen, unless you're, Obama or whatever, actual book sales really don't matter. Whether you sell 5, 10, or 15, it's not the point. The trick is, what are the doors that is going to open? And some of this is just basic math. So what's your average engagement side if you're a consultant, if you're a speaker or whatever? How many of those would you need to be impactful, to have a difference? And then I think, and this is where strategy comes into play, do you have the right product and offering solution, right? Because a lot of times I've got a book that's $20 or $25, and then you can hire me as a whatever speaker for 25 grand. And there's a lot of blank space in the middle, right? What about tools? What about video based?
Preaching to the choir, bingo. And that's a conversation I have too. It's like, okay, say we get the ideal media for you, whether, you want your fast company or that trade publication. Yep. What are you going to do with that attention? How are you going to turn that, like, hey, I need to talk to Peter, to monetize that? And you can't go from 0 to 100. Like, I want to hire you to consult for $100,000. I want to hire you to speak for $50,000. There's a lot of steps in between. And then I go to the author's page and they say, I want to speak. I'm like, you don't have speaker anywhere.
Right. How would I know that? And I would say, as much as somebody may fall in love with you and your content, they're not going to stay up late at night trying to figure out how to get money in your pocket, right? They're just not. You have to make it really, really easy. Like if you say I have to speak, I mean, that seems like an obvious thing. If I go to your website, where's the speaker button? Like, duh.
Right.
Like, it doesn't...
And Peter, I sound so brilliant to these people because to you and me, it's common sense. But to these people who are living in a world that's not able to see that. Okay, thank you. But it's like, they're brilliant. They're Wharton business experts.
Sure.
And they're in their niche, and it's fantastic. But they're just so brand new to expert branding.
Well, they tend to compartmentalize where, hey, I'm in book mode. Once I finish the book and get it out, then I'll think about how I grow my business. And I'm like, no. Those things need to be related. And I'm not saying that, every 3 pages in the book, it's click here and buy here. That's tacky. That's not what I'm talking about. But you have to think about who those client avatars are and what's the journey. So if someone gets a book, then what's next? Oh, maybe we do advisory work. Maybe there's a suite of digital tools. Maybe there's video-based training. Maybe it has to be logical, and you have to sort of plant the seeds of that in the book and think about, you mentioned sort of HR and tech. Okay, HR and tech, what are the 10 problems that they have? How does the content that I have in my book solve it? And even if your book, and I think this is where people get hung too, tells them exactly what they need to do, right? In the 7 Habits, one of the best business books of all time, Stephen Covey published all 7. Start with it. Like, Could you do that all on your own? Absolutely. Do people spend hundreds of millions of dollars to hire the copy organization to implement?
Yes, they do.
Of course they do. And there's a
Yeah.
different market for both. There's a very, very small percentage of people that will say, got this book, wow, game changer. I can implement this on my own. Most can't. Most of us know how to lose weight, right? But we got to hire a trainer or go on we know
Yes,
that. So I
we
think
know.
that's the whole piece.
Yes, yes. You got to give some things away and not be afraid to. You said it perfectly. When this is what we do every day is find those headaches, find what problems you can solve, show them why your credibility, why your experience is the right fit for them. And that's how you're going to nurture them. So they go to I look at their website, an author, and they have no newsletter sign up. They have a blog that's old. They don't have their profile set up as a speaker with any type of a reel, but they have these goals. So that's exciting for me. I'm like, all right, we can, start you on that path. But having these conversations before we engage with them and in publicity is so important, because if we don't know what their goals are and telling them where their holes are, we can get the best publicity in the world, but it's not going to be valuable to them
Right.
unless they have a plan to, nurture those new eyes and to build their thought leadership and ways that it's not publicity. It's like, okay, now we can lead the horse to water, but we can't force them to drink. So the author has to have a really strong plan in place if they want to maximize exposure from publicity.
Yep. No, I love it. So any final thoughts? Because lots of folks are thinking about, should I write a book? When do I write a book? Where do I deploy PR? When should they start thinking about some of the things that you're talking about, like the social media presence, getting content out
Yeah.
consistently? How does that
I,
fit into their
I
world?
That's a great question. I would love every author to have an hour conversation with a publicist before they even write their book, ideally, right? Because then we're going to be pushing them onto, who should you be talking to? Who is this book really for? What is the goal of this book?
Hmm.
Um, Authors tend to write too broad. My book is for everybody, every business, every.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if we could get them even before they write their book, that would be great. But if that's not the case, once they have their publishing plan in place, whether they're self-publishing or going through a hybrid or traditional publisher, talk to your publicist about the plan, because we can say, you need to be doing this before a publication date. You need to be doing this before we even pitch the media. So the more time that we have to kind of set them up for success, the best to maximize the launch of the
I
book.
love that. One of the things I've heard from a lot of folks after is, well, I just trusted the publicist because, they came highly recommended. And I'm like, no, shame on you. You don't have to have the level of expertise or domain knowledge that they have, but do you understand the logic that they're applying? Does it make sense to you what they're coming at? Some of the tactical, Clubhouse this or whatever, they don't need to go
Right,
there. But okay,
right,
here is, a good publicist should be able to articulate, here is my strategy, here is the tactics that support it, here are the things that you told us are your goals, and here's that. And if you don't understand that storyline, if it's
right,
mumbo jumbo, whatever, you shouldn't be putting your money there.
right. And to a big question to go with that is, I have a publicist and my publisher. Should I hire extra help?
Yeah.
And, and there's, all kinds of answers there. But what we do that's different than an in-house publicist, we look at the author's complete brand. I don't care if the book's 3 years old. If that's what the media
Exactly.
is talking about, we can pull that in.
Mhm.
The publisher, the publicist at a publisher, they're all about the book, which is fantastic. What we're more about is the personality cultivation, the brand. So the book is there and it's
Well, they're
fantastic.
all about the book,
They
and
have
they've
to
got
be.
8 other authors, and their boss is
Well,
telling them, "Oh, this author, wink, wink, give them 2 hours a week, and this one, wink, wink, give them 20 hours a week," because there's a
right,
relative weighting to where they
right.
can apply their resources for whatever reasons. Whereas when you're going out of pocket for an outside PR, you are the rock star, you're the client.
You are the rock star. You are the center of attention, and we look at not just the book, but we go beyond the book,
Sure.
which is usually more valuable, especially when book sales always welcome, but it's a much bigger goal than book sales is what we do.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point, is that it's an easy, almost lazy metric, and it's not the metrics. It's a
Right.
metric that needs to
A
fit
metric.
the picture.
Exactly.
Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, Sandy, and I appreciate you and I are in violent agreement a lot, so that's good.
Yes.
Fun, but maybe boring for the listeners. I don't know, but it's good stuff.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.